Okay, I'd like to call to order the trustee meeting, the regularly scheduled meeting of May 3rd, 2021 at 1 p.m. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the flag
of the
of the
United
United States of America
and
and
to the
to the
republic
republic
for which
which
it stands,
stands
one nation,
under God,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
justice for all.
Okay. So will Secretary Treasurer Horowitz please call the roll?
Sure. President Eric Schultz.
Here.
Secretary Treasurer Scott M. Horowitz, I am obviously here. Trustee Ed J. Warner Jr.
Yeah.
Trustee William Pell IV.
Present.
Trustee Ann Welker.
Here.
President, we have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next trustee meeting work session is 5/17/21 at 9:30 a.m. That's via video conference, and the next regular meeting is the same day, 5/17/21 at 1 p.m. video conference. First item on the agenda is discussions. We have discussion about boat lift on 11 Long Point Road that Ann wants to talk about.
Good. Charles, could you please let Mr. Bornstein in? The
Yep.
homeowner
Okay.
is, sorry, Charles.
I have them.
Thank you. The homeowner is here and would like to discuss the situation and describe it. Hi, Mr. Bornstein.
Hi, how are you?
We're
Hi.
good, thanks.
Hi. Go ahead.
Do you want to describe the situation here with your boat slip and the boat lift?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And thank you all for the time and for getting me onto your schedule so quickly. I appreciate it. So by way of quick background, I know you guys are busy. I purchased a home in 11 Long Point Road in Sag Harbor. I want to say I closed last June or July. I've never lived on the water before. My principal residence is in Muttontown. My dog is joining our call. This is Daisy. So when I purchased the home, I purchased a water ski boat, a ski nautique. It's about a 24-foot water ski boat. Given that it's a sort of a lake boat, I wanted to get a lift, but having not lived, on the water previously, I went to the village and I asked the person that was marketing the lift to make sure they coordinated. We followed all the rules. And the last thing I wanted to do was to move into a neighborhood and upset my neighbors. And so, we went to great lengths to, back and forth. And I believe you guys have at least some of the communications with the town of Muttontown, where we were seeking approval or at least some guidance on whether this was authorized or not. And we eventually got an email where they confirmed that it was okay to proceed. By that point in time, there was a sufficient delay in, because of Corona and the backlogs with the production of the lift that, I gave them a $5,000 deposit. The lift didn't actually arrive into the warehouse in wherever it is in the Hamptons. I think it's somewhere in the Shinnecock area until I think it was end of August, beginning of September. And at that point, it didn't make sense to actually install the lift just so I could pull it out a month later and store it for the winter. So this, early this spring, it was probably late winter, just again in an abundance of caution, because I know how, understandably finicky towns can be about any deviations when it relates to the water. I asked to just go back and be absolutely sure to go back. And I wanted to see something in writing that was unequivocal that this was okay to proceed before I installed it. And there was a lengthy back and forth, which again, I believe you guys have the communications on. And we were told at that point that the person that had approved it last fall was no longer there. And they kept sending me the code. I'm a patent lawyer. I can read codes, sometimes they're clear, sometimes they're not. But I was just looking for somebody to say, this is okay, or it's not. And I had already been told once it was okay. And after quite a lengthy back and forth, I was finally directed to Ann, Ms. Welker, excuse me, maybe a week or two ago. So it was very recent that I was actually directed to this body, which I had been unaware of up till that point in time. And unfortunately, nobody in Sag Harbor ever told me that you guys existed or explained your charter, which is interesting. You know, it's certainly fascinating. And Ms. Welker was kind enough to explain a little bit of the history of it. But in any event, I obviously had been unaware that you guys existed. And so, you know, I'm in the situation where I have the boat, I have the lift, or at least I've purchased the lift. I'm told that they won't refund my deposit. And I now understand that there are some prohibitions against it. And just by way of further explanation, the lift itself, the reason why I went with this very expensive, was I think $25,000 lift, is because I was told that this one would be approved because it's essentially a floating, like a jet ski dock.
Excuse me.
Yes,
Excuse
sir.
me a second. Could we get a picture of the float of the, so people know exactly what we're talking about? James, do you have a picture of the float, what it looks
No,
like?
hang on. I'll send it to you, James. And, or you can forward it, Bill. You have it as well.
That would be helpful to, for the people who are listening.
Okay.
Sure.
It's
One
gonna,
other quick, go ahead, sorry.
it's just gonna take a minute to get that, so working on it.
Okay. One other question is this an established company that does business in the town, with these boat lifts, or did you have someone from here where you live?
I'm sorry, sir. Are you asking me the question?
Yes. Is this an established company that you dealt with here?
I have never dealt with them previously. It's a very established company. This is a very large company that makes very high-end lifts. I was told that nobody buys them locally here because the lifts generally cost more than the boats that most
Oh, no,
people.
what I meant was the install. Was this going to be the company that you bought this from? You bought it directly from the manufacturer?
I did.
Oh,
I
so
did.
a company that does marine contracting in the area. Okay.
No, I bought it directly from the company, but I went to, just to clarify, I did communicate with the person that was actually communicating with Sag Harbor is the local installation company that is authorized to install them for the manufacturer. So it's a little of both. The answer to your question, sir, I was communicating with the local installation expert that is an authorized manufacturer or installation representative of the national company from whom I purchased the lift.
Okay.
So
I think it should give that name to Mrs. Welker there so she can contact the company and acquaint them with the rules out here if they don't know them.
she's been in contact with the company. That's how actually I was put in touch with Ms. Welker.
Okay.
They're based in Calverton.
Do they do a lot of work out here?
I haven't heard of them before, but you said, Mr. Bornstein, that not many people purchase this lift, right?
My understanding is that. Go ahead, sir.
No, I said, okay.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah. The reason why it's so expensive is because and again, I went this route specifically because I was told by Sag Harbor that this was the only one that would be allowed because it's not affixed to the ground, so it doesn't disrupt the ecosystem, and it has a standalone solar power system, so it doesn't require a separate electrical system. So it literally just floats, and it only lifts the boat inches above the water so that it's not disruptive to neighbors and so forth. So for a variety of reasons, which all made sense to me, I went the more expensive route, so that I would comply with what I thought were the rules. And, and then here we are.
Well, in most places in the town, the boat lifts are not allowed because of essentially the visual impact. So it was written into the blue book that your section in town was not included in allowing these particular items. But I took a look at your property, and you basically have your large lots around you, plus you have looks like a previously dredged little canal in there in front of your house, correct? That's the right piece of property, right?
Yes, sir. I have effectively a little cutout. It's almost like a slip cut into I have about an acre of property. And what you probably don't see if you're looking at the property lines is there's, natural reeds on both sides of it, which are probably 8 to 10 feet tall. So literally nobody can even see my lift.
Right.
Or the boat, I should say, because there is no lift there. But nobody can even see my dock, I should say. Just
Well,
because,
the board could consider this, but it would you'd have to we'd have to change the Blue Book of regulations there to allow it, which would necessitate a public hearing to do that. So I guess, Ann, what were you going to suggest as far as you're going to send some drawings around and some photos and get a sense of the board?
Photos and drawings of the lift itself.
Well, of the area and everything like that, because evidently this area, by looking at the maps and the aerial photos, that this is pretty much of an isolated situation, not your norm.
So my thoughts were, the Blue Book reads that there are no boat lifts permitted in Sag Harbor Cove,
Mhm.
understandably, and that there's a 4-foot at mean low water depth required. This little dug canal, if you will, is off of Ligony Brook, which is off of Sag Harbor Cove. So if you wish to proceed with a public hearing, we can certainly do that
Well,
in
you have to.
interests of,
The Blue Book, you have to.
in interests of the Blue Book. And I did send around the email the other day with it's a fairly extensive email chain that names all people that were involved in this conversation since
Right.
July of last year.
Right.
And I repeated sending around the description of the lift just minutes ago. James, if you scroll down a bit, because I believe it's your intention, Mr. Bornstein, to affix this floating lift to your dock. James, if you go to the one that has the hood cover, that shows it affixed to there, just on the right-hand side there. So that shows what it would look like affixed to the dock and
although to be
lifted.
clear, Ms. Wilker, I did not purchase the hood cover
Oh,
specifically.
no.
Oh, yeah. I just wanted to make that clear because I was afraid that would go too high and I didn't want anybody to see it, meaning I didn't want to, in any way obstruct the neighbors. So
Thank you for that point. So mine was more just that it will be affixed to the dock minus the awning hood cover. But what my point especially was that it's not a lift that lifts the boat 4 or 5 feet in the air. I believe the specs on it are that it lifts, shoot, I had that a minute ago. I'm not pulling it up right now, but it lifts. Do you know, Mr. Bornstein, how high above the water it lifts?
I was told inches above the water, but I don't
Right.
know precisely what the specs say, so I couldn't represent
Right.
to you what it
Okay.
said.
Okay, but we can send around drawings and so forth, or an aerial shot of the site for sure. And then if we could set a public hearing for it, Sean, what would be or Lisa, what would be the time frame of that?
Does Mr. Bornstein have a DEC permit for this already?
I don't believe you need one.
I don't think you do.
No? For the rest of the
No,
structure?
no, it's floated. It floats.
Right.
Right, but the thing it's attaching to, is this all as built? This was not on the, work
Well-
session. This was right on a discussion for a public hearing. So I'm not entirely familiar with his circumstance.
So
It's on an existing dock, which is, I certainly hope is permitted. In other words, the dock is not being modified.
Okay, fantastic. I think your time frame for a public hearing, we're looking at June 7th is our next available.
Yep.
All right. I don't even know if I'll go forward. I may have to just eat the money then, because the place that has the dock is charging me to keep it there, and the guy is not being very cooperative because he feels like we got approval last year, because we did.
Okay.
So he's now threatening to never service my boat again, and to
Really?
Yeah, I mean, he's being, you know, quite abrasive. I have never directly communicated with him. The woman with whom he works, or I should say that works for him, has been charming and very helpful and cooperative. But I think he's coming down on her, if I understand correctly, because she's calling me kind of apoplectic and apologetic, but saying, you need to leave, get your boat out of here, and you need to get your lift, because they service this is the place that services, coincidentally, the type of boat that I purchased. So, so she's now saying they will no longer service my boat, and the next closest service place is Connecticut, because this thing's been sitting in their warehouse for so long.
Well, it's not, to service your boat, because there's no problem with you putting your boat in the water.
No, that I understand, but they're just saying because of the difficulty that we've had with the lift, he will no longer service my boat, in addition to, you know, the problem with the lift. So I'm in the dilemma if I have to wait till June.
The same company services your boat as installs the lifts?
By pure coincidence, the authorized dealer for this type of boat, nautique boats, is the same place that I was sent, completely coincidental. I mean, it was really kind of a random coincidence when I went to the manufacturer, which I think is in Seattle or something, of the lift, you know, because it was funny. They sent it to me. They sent me this person. I said, oh, I've been talking to her already, because she, you know, is the person that's going to winterize my boat. So in any event, it happens to be the same person. So she's had my boat since whenever it was, October, that I pulled it out of the water, and then has the lift sitting there too.
Right. It's actually, unfortunately, the soonest public hearing. We have to notice the hearing and then have a posting. So we'd have to notice this hearing on May 17th, and then following meeting is for June 7th. So to meet our open meetings law requirements, that's the time frame we're looking at. The other questions were regarding if you needed DEC permits and dock permits. Obviously, you're looking at a much longer permitting process. As it's scheduled, the board just needs to decide if this is something they can permit or not, and the public would need to weigh in if they're interested. So that's where our time frame comes from. So I'm sorry you're going through all of this, and we're certainly trying to accommodate any way this board can.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's just stressing that you got caught up in this bureaucratic nightmare. But well, maybe we.
Hey, Scott,
Yeah,
maybe you should speak to the owner, because that's not very good business for repeat customers. You can have your the boat lift delivered and stored somewhere else on another piece of property somewhere.
Yeah, really.
And you can put your boat in, you know, there's other, you know,
we
I mean,
have an overlay.
we're all boat people, and, you know, service is I hear the best thing. If a guy doesn't service my boat, I move on to the next guy, you know?
Well, I'll give you, it's funny because I just purchased a fishing boat from Spellman's in Shinnecock. They've been incredible. But forgive me, somebody keeps calling over and over and over again. Probably one of my kids. But the complicating factor, truthfully, I didn't want to bore you with all the details. This place has been for many years the authorized dealer of my boat, and apparently they were either thrown out or they quit. The sense I got from the woman was that they were terminated as the local authorized dealer for Nautique, now are selling Mastercraft. And so he has less of an incentive to take care of a Nautique boat. So apparently he still has an obligation, or at least a willingness to service existing customers, but he's not terribly interested in the brand anymore. So, you know, I think that could be part of it as well.
Yeah. So you move on and take your boat and bring it somewhere else. You lift until we go through the public hearing, because
I understand that, but if I purchase it and I mean, I've already given him the $5 or $6 grand deposit. If I give him another 20 grand for the whole lift, and then I find out in June that this is not approved, well, then I've got a bigger problem on my hands.
Yeah. Okay. I understand that. I thought you paid for the whole thing already.
No, I only paid the deposit. I don't know what his plan is. If I tell him now I'm not going forward, but
We have an overlay to see what this thing exactly is. Does that James prepare something where we can look at that?
I could pull it up. Just give me a minute.
I think that would be helpful. Why don't you show us exactly where this is?
What's the address?
11 Long Point. Sorry, Mr. Bornstein.
11 what? Long Point?
Sag Harbor.
one thing you have to remember in Sag Harbor, there are a few properties similar to Mr. Bornstein's property that would accommodate a boat lift. I would say the majority of Sag Harbor Cove are very narrow, small pieces of property, and you could look at hundreds of these boats on boat lifts. It would not, I could see aesthetically, it would be definitely an issue. This piece of property is unique because it is it's a indented boat slip, which is probably about 300 feet in, and it's fairly wide across about 50 or 75 feet, I guess. So
Right.
it's kind of unique. It's surrounded by cattails and natural vegetation. So you
Right.
literally wouldn't see it. But if you zoom out and you look on the whole Sag Harbor Cove, it really could become problematic, especially on going between this whole western shore there. There are probably dozens of properties that are 60 or 70 feet wide. So you could see a proliferation of these boat lifts with boats on them. There's already docks there. It's going to really decrease the value of some of the homes. I feel. I mean,
well, why don't we set a public hearing just to have it like an insurance policy, and then another day or two to have some discussions with.
Can I make a recommendation? If we do a public hearing, that we do it on a case by case basis, where this area might accommodate a boat lift, but some of the other areas in the Cove, I know it's not practical to have them.
Well, he should
Exactly.
submit an application for this before we schedule a public hearing. We need something to rule on. So
Right.
either request for a letter of authorization or an application to the office before we set a public hearing.
Correct. That's the protocol. When we have an application, then we start to review. Right now, we have nothing to review for a public hearing. So we need something to be submitted, and then we would set the public hearing on that criteria. Correct, Sean?
Correct. And then I'll notice it on May 17, and we'll set the public hearing for June 7.
Okay, but we might have it resolved by then. I have a few ideas of how maybe we could approach the subject, talk it over with council, and we'll go from there, okay? And we'll be in contact with Mr.
So-
Bornstein.
Hey, Eric,
Yes.
is that a Doug Lagoon, or is that man-made?
No, I'll bring that up yet until we discussed, we looked into the ownership patterns in that area, Bill.
Okay, and also,
Know where you're going.
okay, all right.
Sir, may I just point out one thing, and then I appreciate all of your time. I know you guys have other things to discuss, but I've only lived here since July, but given that it's a water ski boat, I can't really take it out of the harbor. So I spent a lot of time floating around the harbor. And if you notice, I believe there's only 2 dugout slips in the entire harbor. Mine and the one next to me. The one next to me is different because it has 2 properties that use the same location. So he wouldn't have space for anything like this. So
Okay.
I believe this is the only piece of property where this would even be an issue, unless it was permitted in the open water, which is very different than this kind of little cove. I don't know if it was man-made or not, because as I said,
Not to cut you off, but let's do some investigation
Yes.
on existing covenants and restrictions, things like that on the property. We'll have a better idea. You're catching us kind of, off guard a little bit as far
course.
as new issues that are coming up. And we'll get back to you in a day or two. Okay.
Thank you, sir. And I appreciate all of your time again. I know this is an unusual
course.
situation.
We'll be in touch, Mr. Bornstein. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
good luck.
Thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. Okay. Have the D. Okay, public hearings. First on the agenda is a public hearing for 65 Cliff Drive LLC, 65 Cliff Drive, Noyak, New York. Tax map 909-1-18.1 body water in the Dug Canal. We have a letter that we received on April 30th from Tarbert and Lester, the attorneys that were representing the project, whom it may concern. We understand that a public hearing for this application is on the agenda to be continued at the meeting of Monday, May 3rd, 2021, We are hereby requesting that the hearing be adjourned and continued until the following meeting on May 17th, 2021. At the end of last week, we received copies of the documents submitted by an agent for several neighbors, and the applicant's marine contractor needs additional time to review these documents, as well as the recommendations made at the public hearing on April 14th in order to amend the plans as necessary. So I'm going to open the public hearing. I'll make the motion.
Second.
Not seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Now, the applicant has asked for a adjournment, but if anyone wishes to make any comments today, we want to limit it to about 3 minutes or so. You will also have the ability to speak at the public portion on anything you want, but probably suggested that once they come up with some more additional drawings, it would be appropriate at that time. But if anybody wants to say anything, I'll open it up right now.
Gotta raise your hand.
Anybody wants to say anything, to raise your hand. The applicant is not going to be present.
I'm sure Tiffany is there.
And just to be clear, everyone will have another opportunity on the 17th if you would like. Of course, you're entitled to speak today as well.
Yes.
We'll go into the record.
Uh-oh, it's on scene.
I'm on scene.
Wow.
I'm trying to see. Do you guys know how to flip the camera? Is there a way to
Can you
flip
turn your phone? Can you turn
Like
it sideways? Sideways. So
Okay.
it's the whole,
How about that? Can you see it?
Yes.
can you
Okay.
turn your phone sideways so we can see the whole thing? There you go. Look at
Okay.
that.
So
All right.
this is the man-made, completely avoidable landslide.
Uh-oh, what happened?
Can you see me?
Yes.
Yeah, Tiffany, you got to do it slower.
Okay. So what we have here, it's about 38 inches high at this point. This landslide has been sitting here in this water since October 2019. That post was 15 feet upland behind the bulkhead.
That's good that that's there because it gives us a benchmark.
Those rocks were behind the bulkhead. So all of this land has fallen.
Ask her to show our property if you can.
She was.
Yep. From 65 Cliff. All of this is landslide. This escarpment is the continued erosion from 65 Cliff Drive.
Mhm.
The property is now shifting upland onto 61 Cliff. So you could see here that it's now going up on the neighboring property.
On what?
Our property.
So what's happening here, as you can see, this low tide today was at 11:30 a.m. Just to give a perspective of how destroyed this canal is because of this landslide. The shoal has increased as well because of it. On May 8th, 2019, Conservation Board Wetland Application Advisory Report shows that the applicant requested significant lesser wetland building setbacks in trade for the removal of that functional bulkhead. In that same report, it is noted that the property significantly slopes toward the water. Without any planning of the property to make sure no harm would come to the water and no testing to determine the classification of that bulkhead, it was fully removed without any permits, and we were denied the right to a public hearing. It was removed 5 short months after the trade brokered. The property continues to erode from 65 Cliff. It's stopping low tide water flow and navigation, and now high tide water flow is compromised. Yes, you could see it has increased in height. It is now sits above the high water mark. It's systematically pinching off the canal. It is changing the ecosystem and the environment and endangering Paynes Creek. A notice of violation was posted on July 30th, 2020. So we're almost a year of them trying to find time to remediate this problem. And a second violation was months ago. This property has had no fines and acts without impunity. This is a precedent-setting situation. Allowing this to continue without fully being remediated is showing the town and its residents and its developers that they don't need permits. They could ignore Blue Book codes and procedures, all in the effort to do whatever they desire to a property. Because there is no punishment, it communicates to developers that they could do and get whatever they want by ignoring the rules. Because asking for permission, there would be stipulations. Full remediation of this area includes bulkheading the property to contain the erosion and dredging back to -1 foot. So again, this tape measure
Gavin, if I could just prompt you, you're coming up on year 3. I'm sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, so I think the situation, thank you for the time check. The situation speaks for itself.
Yep.
This is
I'm
all
happy to concede my time to Tiffany.
Excuse me?
George Colatini, I'm happy to concede my 3 minutes so Tiffany can continue.
Okay. How much longer are you going to be, Tiffany?
If I could just also point out, Mr. Schultz, so as this landslide has continued to erode, the shifting of the water from Paynes Creek comes in, it flushes in, it doesn't have the ability to pull back out with enough force to clean the area. So the shoal over here, as you could see, which we know the shoal has been here, the shoal has risen. So now where I am, the landslide, this was the deepest part of the canal, which last summer we were able to navigate our boats through it. Now we definitely cannot do that. And now this summer, because it exceeds high water mark, we can't even get a paddleboard out here. Mm-hmm. So we are being closed off from both sides. The property is also running onto Mr. Coaliti's property at 69. He has a deep water dock, and at true low tide, there's more land. Like this is all new shoaling. All of this is new. It's continuing to increase, and it's moving into Paynes Creek, encroaching on his deep water dock. It's moving down the canal, and we are being pinched off from both shores. And that's 65 Cliff Drive. This was bulkheaded property. The bulkhead, sorry to go so fast. I don't know how Barbara Walters did this. So that's the bulkhead. That's where it tied into. And that line continued all the way to those rocks. All of this beyond came from 65 Cliff Drive. There's no disputing it. First Coastal's plan proves it, and it needs to be cleaned up down to -1 foot. That's my time.
Excellent presentation. I think that's the first we've ever had something of that sort go on. This is historical and Trustee.
I hope it helps, because I really do believe that seeing it communicates the true devastation to this area. And we again appreciate the time and understanding that the trustees have showed, and we know you are trying to get this remediated to have flowing water. Like this is we're coming on high tide. Just look at the depth. That's the water depth.
I was there, I think high tide, it was like 4 inches or something like that.
Yeah. Yep.
I think we have other speakers that are wanting to speak.
Yeah, let's listen
Power
up.
of Zoom.
And then, like I said, at the next, when we're adjourning, we're going to adjourn this to the next meeting, and we expect some answers, and then we'll deliberate, hopefully get this thing moving along as fast as possible.
Hey, Eric, before Tiffany goes, can she do one more thing? Is she still there?
I'm here, yes.
Can you do a very slow, because you're jumping all around us, of the whole thing, very slow, so people can see it.
Okay.
Start from the beginning and go, you know.
Okay, that's
Okay.
a neat.
Okay,
Cool.
so this is 61 Cliff, which is the direct adjacent property to 65. So the landslide has gone up their property, has slid into the canal.
Excuse me, what you see on the sand there, that has covered half of our property.
Right, so the length of
The cutoff wood, or whatever you call it, is the beginning of it.
the length of their bulkhead is about 80 feet. So this is, they're about 1, 2, 3, 4, they're almost 5 pilings of land. So this is all landslide, and you could see where it tied back here, Mr. Pell. You see the
Thank
tie
you.
back?
Yes.
Okay, so that's where the 65 bulkhead tied back into. So all of this material, so it was a straight line. That big boulder, can you see that big boulder?
Yes, maybe can you walk down there?
Sure. So this big boulder was
Move your
behind.
finger. Move your
Uh,
finger.
This is very difficult. Okay, that big boulder was behind the bulkhead, and there's still a ton of debris. There's glass, because when the property fell, it unearthed a lot of debris. So this post was about 15 feet inside of the land. So that was, I think there's pictures on record that show that. This is,
Well, let me interrupt you for a second. Going on Google Earth,
yep,
look at that piece of property. It shows a bulkhead and with a small aluminum or small boat sitting on top of the bulkhead and tied to that post.
correct.
Yeah.
Yes, there are several pictures that do show that.
Got to figure out what year that was created. Just to,
That one, there are pictures I have going back to the inception of Google Earth, and I think the one that you're referring to is 2018 or 2019.
Okay.
The bulkhead was installed in 1966. So
Right.
for 54 years, it has been doing what it was designed to do, to protect upland from the water. So,
Okay.
so here's, I'm gonna rotate backward.
Hey, Tiffany, will you just walk up to the rocks so they can see how it's going onto my property?
Sure.
Move
So
your
this is
finger.
sorry, is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, so these are the boulders that was behind the bulkhead. This is all material that continues to erode and fall from the property, rebar, spikes of wood. So what's happening here is this is risen. This sea floor, this was the deepest part of this channel through here. And now you could see their increase in height. This, it's not very deep. This is 69 Cliff Drive. He has a deep water dock, and he grafted on one side 24 inches and an 18 inches on the other side. He's not even sure if he could bring his boat out this summer. And
Okay.
again, we're coming at, the tide is coming in now, so it's a little higher. This was behind the bulkhead. This is the escarpment up to 65 Cliff, and you could really see how much land and how far it actually fell. Here's those rocks, Mr. Pell.
Thank you for showing everyone. You can call me Bill too.
Feels weird. You're going to be Mr. Pell to me always.
Okay. Make me
Oh,
feel
here.
old.
Well, excellent presentation as far as what's going on down there right now. It'll help us tremendously.
Thank you.
I know there's some other people watching this that would be very interested in it also.
Yes. Hey, Ed,
Yes, Billy.
what do you think those spikes of wood? Do you think that's a remnants of the old bulkhead?
I think that's the remnants of the bulkhead that they didn't take out.
Okay.
Well, there were tiebacks in an April 13th report when I pointed out that there were tiebacks and tie rods. They did come out and remove some of them, but as the land continues to erode, they're unearthing more and more remnants of debris.
Yeah.
And I would like to point out that when Marty Shea did a field report here, he notes no change to the site conditions. Should I walk back and?
Yeah,
no,
show them one more time.
What?
You can show them one more time.
No,
No change.
no change.
Walk down to your end and show how there's no water anymore.
Yeah, so what's resulting on this side? So I think, Mr. Schultz, you explained it much better than I could. You had said that the force of the water is moving in, and it's moving much slower now because high tide is severely compromised at this point. So as the water was flushing in, I have an 80-foot length bulkhead, and about 40 feet of it now is filled with just like muck or sediment. Like it's just building up and pushing, but it's not allowing to be pulled out. So we're having a buildup over there. So we're being closed on two ends here with the shoaling, the landslide, and then the muck on the back end. I'm not really sure of the benefit of closing off of what was a navigable tidal waterway, but that's exactly what's happening. And
very good.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Thank you, guys.
We'll be in touch. Anybody else want to say anything today before?
Yes.
Okay.
The Brodies.
Yep.
I won't be very long. Okay. First of all, I'm disabled. And before 65 Cliff Drive removed the functioning bulkhead, I was able to kayak from my property next door to 65 Cliff Drive. Now I have to drag my kayaks 150 feet to 200 feet across the sand in order to reach the bay. So it limits me quite a bit from what it used to be. We renovated 65 Cliff Drive in 2007.
61.
I'm sorry, we renovated 61 Cliff Drive, that's where we live. And Marty Shea was involved and didn't allow us to repair or remove our bulkhead. 65 Cliff Drive did remove their working bulkhead with Marty Shea's permission, and as I understand it, no permits. The canal is now non-navigable, and the sand from 65 Cliff Drive has drifted to more than half the length of our property and a great deal out to the bay. Who or what changed his mind? 65 Cliff Drive. How reliable are the standards for such issues? What construction company removed a functioning bulkhead without all the proper permits and without a record? Could the contractors have done this in the daytime without proper permits? At low tide, the canal is silted in, leaving a site that is like a swamp, like muck, and a totally unhealthy situation for various biological issues and diseases. The canal needs to be dredged by 65 Cliff Drive, as they have ruined the waterway visually and ecologically. It is now disgusting. How did they get a building permit? Does this dredging cloud the C of O or the title? So if it's not a violation for C of O, why should we bother doing anything to remediate or enjoy what we'd like to see at the foot of our property along this canal? My 3 minutes are up.
Okay, well said.
Maybe we can put in a bulkhead without having any permits also, or take ours out, since it doesn't seem to matter anymore.
Well, it matters to us. That's why we're having a public hearing right now. But we seem to be the only one that matters to.
Yes.
Well, that's a problem, Mr. Schultz.
What-
That really is.
Is there anything we can do to cloud their C of O, to cloud the ability for them to flip the property after they've done all this to ruin ours?
Well, I can't answer that right now. You'd have to talk that up with the town attorney in another conversation. I can't offer you legal counsel on here, but let's just deal with this issue at hand right now. I'm sure it'll come to a favorable conclusion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything to say? I mean,
Thomas
you'll be
Thomas
able to-
Jones,
Yes.
can you hear me? Yes,
can hear
I'm
you.
sorry. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I sent a letter. I was wondering if everybody had received that. Ms. Welker was the only one that responded that she received it and read it.
When did you send this?
Several weeks ago, I sent the letter.
Okay.
Mom, why don't you read it?
Well, I don't have it now, but I just wanted to respond to what Tiffany was saying and what you see. I kayak there and fish there. This time of year as the stripers are moving in. I noticed about a year and a half ago, after that bulkhead was removed, there was significant problems at that time that I actually spoke with some of the neighbors. I live at 58 Cliff Drive. I'm not on the water. I'm lucky enough to have neighbors that allow access to the water pretty much along this whole Bay Point community. And so it makes it easier for everybody in this community to use that waterway. And I do mean everybody uses that waterway that lives in this community itself. Like she said, it has become to the point where it's like a toilet. It just flushes in, but doesn't flush itself out. And that is becoming more and more prevalent. As you can see, it's completely, at this point, not navigable. And prior to that, there were neighbors that lived there prior that had a boat that every year they were able to use that waterway and dock their boat at their dock. That clearly you could not have a boat in there now and do the same thing. Right. And I'm sure you have several pictures of that. So that's all I wanted to really say. It has definitely hurt not just the owners, it has hurt our community. And I appreciate the time. Thank you very much.
Mr. Jones, you can send your letter. On the notice of public hearing, there is an email address to make it part of the public record. So I'd encourage anyone who wants to submit written comments to submit it to the email address specified or to Lisa Dunlap, the chief of staff of the trustees. And that way you can ensure your letter becomes part of the public hearing record. Mr. Colatitis, you are still entitled to speak. I understand your gesture. It's my job to advise the roll, and you do certainly have a chance to speak still.
I don't think it's we appreciate all your time. I think Tiffany did a great job of making her point, and I just wanted to be present so that you guys would appreciate as an additional neighbor. I'm concerned about this, but I want to respect your time, and I don't think there's anything I can add that Tiffany already hasn't done a very articulate job of pointing out. So
okay, well, as was said before, we're going to extend this public hearing till the next general meeting. So, if you have any other thoughts, then feel free to come on again and express them. Okay?
I will absolutely be there. I love the Long Island Sound. We love this home, and we bought it specifically for this dock because we love to fish, and so this is a real problem for our family.
Understood. So, Charles, you have anybody else wishes to speak?
Vito Saladino from 55 Cliff Drive.
Were you? Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, if Tiffany's still on the water and she needs more time to display anything, she could use my 3 minutes. But I'd just like to say that the water from the past 2 years to now, as Tiffany pointed out, and the other neighbors have too, it's just getting murkier, and there's no flow in the water. It's becoming really like the person said before, a sewer, which is not that nice thing to have there in Sag Harbor. So I appreciate all the help you guys are doing.
It's good that we have it on a video record of the Gavin's photographs on the record, but different trustees have been down there. I've been down there several times. I know Scott has, and Welker's been down there, so we know what's going on. We've been monitoring it, and well, thanks for your comments. And if there's any more, you're able to say them at the next public hearing. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Coming.
Mr. Schultz, may I just add one other thing?
Yes.
As neighbors, we've all gotten together and we pooled our money to hire Intercoastal to prove our point, which is visual, but now you have it in writing.
Right.
My husband and I, we're retired. We're here for retirement. To pour more money into reactivating this waterway does not seem fair to us. We did not cause it. We did not create it. We did not want it. It was done in the middle of the night without permits by a person who really doesn't have a degree in all of this and has ruined the area for us. If dredging is needed, I'm absolutely positive, which of course it is, I'm really against the neighbors having to pool whatever monies we have to correct this. This was not our problem. This was not caused by us. There were no permits for it. I'm not allowed to even fix my bulkhead. I mean, now you've been nice enough to extend the possibility that we can fix what we have. But this is big bucks for us, and we're retired people. We don't necessarily have that. And I want to make a point of it going on record that it is not our problem to fix. It's 65 Cliff Drive are the developers. They're not going to give a damn. They're not going to live there, just going to sell it. And we have to live with the results of this for the rest of our natural lives. And the smell coming out of here, I'm saying that the next testing should be done on how biologically unsafe it is now, because the smell alone has got to be odious. I can't open up my windows in my house anymore. And this has gone on now for a year and a half, and we've been at the meetings and we've done this. And I just want to make it on record that as neighbors, as retired people, we don't have the bucks to do the dredging that they have caused here to bring this back to a natural landscape. And I personally think that the person who gave permission should be responsible as well.
Okay, well put.
Thank you. Sorry.
Mr. Schultz, could I point something else out? I don't know. I didn't. This shows the continued erosion. It keeps breaking off in chunks.
It's about a foot, right?
Well, you know what's very interesting? It seems to break off in 8-inch height chunks at a time. So this has been going on since October 2019, and it was over 3 feet high, but you could see it's continuing to break off and erode. So
do me a favor and just go over by the adjoining property's bulkhead.
Okay. So it's just continuing.
Okay, so what it appears right now is that the spoil is moving, for the record, and covering up tidal marsh now.
Correct.
And it's moving up.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
And that's Baccharis and Alterniflora and Patents that it's covering up. Okay. Just for the record.
Okay, thank you for that extra time.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
I do now have a copy of Mr. Jones's letter. It was forwarded to me. I see you got an extra E on mine, and Mr. Mr. Warner's email address, but Ann forwarded that, so I'll review your letter there, Mr. Jones.
Okay. Anybody else want to speak?
Yes, I'll speak. I don't always have the opportunity to do so, and in 2 weeks, maybe I won't, but if I'm available, I'll probably reread the same speech. So I'm going to read it to you.
Announce your name and spelling.
Yes. My name is Joe Velardi. It's Vilardi. I live at 53 Cliff. As with my neighbors, I've been attending all the Zoom meetings, but typically didn't speak as Tiffany has been our competent spokesperson. When we purchased our house in 2014, our neighbors, the owners of 55 Cliff at the time, owned a 17-foot boat and docked it at their bulkhead. You can see the boat in this Google Earth picture taken in May of 2016 tied up to their bulkhead. I know it's hard to see, but anyone could go back and check it out for yourself. Our neighbors would sometimes take us on their boat, and we would often see them in the boat coming or going. As a precaution, if it was nearing low tide, they would be careful to stay to the deepest part of the canal to protect the prop. This deepest part of the canal near the mouth was alongside the bulkhead of 65 Cliff. Here was another picture of the boat, as well as one owned by the owner of 65 Cliff at the time, taken from May 2016. I'm trying to show both boats, but there you go.
Okay, that's the boat I was referring to. That's on top of the
Aluminum
boat.
boat. It was aluminum boat, Eric.
Yeah, and it's attached to that post that's sticking up there as like the benchmark right now.
Yeah, he used to use that post to pull a boat in and out up onto his bulkhead because the bulkhead was substantially higher than the water. And this picture was May 2016. So this canal was absolutely navigable prior to the devastation created by a town environmental board member when he recklessly encouraged the removal of a functional bulkhead in trade for a pool to an investment group who purchased 65 Cliff as a flip. I've been kayaking from my house on a regular basis since we purchased it. At very low tide, prior to the bulkhead removal, the deepest water and best way in and out of the canal was alongside the bulkhead at 65 Cliff. At low tide, the top of their bulkhead was basically even in height with my head while seated in the kayak, approximately 2 to 3 feet above water. This bulkhead defined the opening to the canal. I remember of kayaking on abnormally high tides while our bulkhead was underwater. The bulkhead at 65 was still above water, and the sand the bulkhead was holding back was above water and dry. In fact, it was for this reason that when we applied and obtained all the required permits for our bulkhead replacement, that we requested an increase in bulkhead height. Here's a picture from the land side from 65 Cliff, which probably isn't necessary after Tiffany's great video work, but that's the land side. This was taken last August, so it's substantially bigger now. The shoal where the bulkhead once was continues to rapidly increase as the landside continues, and in recent weeks, it is now above water even at most high tides. We have learned via legally obtained town documents that this bulkhead was removed in a trade deal with a Southampton town employee in exchange for a pool, without trustee permits and without the necessary approvals by the DEC or the Army Corps of Engineers. A trade that now restricts our access to the cove and threatens to end our access as the condition continues to quickly worsen. It is inconceivable how one town employee has the authority to orchestrate such a trade deal without even a public hearing. The town of Southampton should be ashamed for allowing this nonsense to happen and continue when it could so easily be corrected. Worse yet is the ongoing delays and pushback from others in an attempt to prevent the correction of this man-made mess that threatens our canal, recreational enjoyment, and property values. 65 Cliff had a functional bulkhead protecting and beautifully defining the entry to the canal. It is my hope and request that the trustees approve a proper restoration plan that includes a bulkhead and, just as important, dredging remediation to clean up the landslide in front of 65 Cliff so the canal can be restored and damage corrected. Thank you.
Trustees, it's George Colatides. If I could just add one more thing, please, because Joe prompted something I think is important. That trade resulted in a pool. It is the most hideous above ground pool, and we haven't talked about that. But in fact, if that trade didn't occur, not only would the bulkhead not be removed, but that above ground pool would not be there either. And I don't know, if Tiffany has pictures of that or not, but it is atrocious.
That's outside of our jurisdiction, so.
I understand. I understand. I was just pointing out that the trade resulted in.
I understand.
Understand. You have to
I'll
stick to the
also-
fact.
Here's another fact that you might find interesting. It is the ZBA position, but that trade of the bulkhead for the pool was for the lesser building setbacks on a 2-story home. So they put the pool, removed the bulkhead on the wrong type of permit. Then they tried to amend that permit for a 3-story home. This was all very calculated. This was a designed, man-made problem. It was a trade deal made very cycloptic view where bulkheads need to be eradicated by Martin Shea's design. And the developers are looking to get everything they could get on the property. So without the right intentions of everybody moving forward to a positive gain, this is what the result is.
Okay. Okay. Is there anyone else wants to speak? Charles, you have anybody else?
I see no hands.
Okay.
I see no other hands.
All right. Well, so we have some other issues coming up. So I'm going to make a motion that we adjourn this public hearing till the next regularly held regular meeting of the town trustees at 1 o'clock on April 17th, 2021.
May 7th.
May, I should say.
Aye.
I'll second that, Eric.
Okay, Ed seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And again, everyone is to add additional comments, and we'll discuss what the applicant is proposing, but in the end, it's trustees that are going to dictate what happens here. Okay.
Additionally, feel free to submit written comments. The email address is provided on the website.
Well, thank you for everybody for your diligence in coming. I know it's been a long, drawn-out process, and we're going to do our best to get this resolved as soon as possible. So, okay, so public portion is next. So do we have anybody to speak at public portion? Charles. I think we have quite a few people that are in line to speak at public portion.
Jill Schwartz
Okay.
or Chuck? One, Jill or Chuck?
I got it.
There you go, Jill.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Andrew Tarika has to go somewhere, so I'm gonna let him speak before me, if that's okay.
Okay. Got to put his stuff on.
Andrew?
Oh, okay. 1 second. He's coming in now.
Okay.
Andrew, put your video on.
Hello,
Hello.
can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Thank you for the time again.
Could you
When we
please
let-
put your name for the record?
Sure, my name is Andrew Tarika, T-A-R-I-C-A.
Okay.
I live at 19 Far Pond Road. We spoke on April 19th at the last meeting. It was a suggestion that I made at the close of that meeting that it would be a good idea for all the interested parties, the DPW, the DEC, the town trustees, to get together to discuss a short-term solution and the longer-term solution to the Far Pond dredging and channel and the rock revetment and public beach that's at the end of Far Pond Road. Subsequent to that meeting, Jill and I have had multiple conversations with Andrew Walker, and I believe he reached out to you, Eric, and some of the other interested parties to see if that meeting could happen. So we just wanted to follow up on that.
I can fill you in on that. I had a discussion with Mr. Hillman of the DPW and Mr. Walker, several conversations last week. And as a matter of fact, Ed Warner and I have a scheduled meeting with Scott Hillary, who is the director of dredging. We're supposed to talk to him today. And we've reached out to the county to offer them any services that they needed for making amendments to the application. So there's been numerous phone calls going back and forth.
Got it. And the conversations that we've had with Andrew Walker is he seems to be very accommodating and wanting to see this happen, and has suggested that he would expedite any way possible the permit and the modification of the permit. So, it's our suggestion that we would love to see something happen sooner rather than later. I brought my boat in on Friday for the season, and I blew my prop on the way in. The channel is no longer marked.
Right.
So if possible, if it can get remarked, there's two of the stakes are broken and underwater, and the one remaining stake is in a place that if you follow it, you're going to break a prop. So I did that. It's just, a situation that has really deteriorated, as you all know.
Right.
And it seems like all of the interested parties want to see this happen, and all share the same view that moving the channel west and depositing the spoil at the end of Far Road and behind the revetment for the public beach. Everyone is saying the same exact thing, but it seems like we need a long-term solution to this and a short-term solution to this. And I would love to just see some action and some follow through. So, we
I assure you that both of those discussions have taken place, long-term and short-term. And had numerous discussions with Mr. Walker. As a matter of fact, I was just talking to him before this meeting started. So might be some light at the end of the tunnel, hopefully.
Got it. Jill, do you want to follow up? Because I have to run, but Jill,
Sure.
can you hear?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay. So from, from what I understand from our conversations with Andrew, that, because I know, Eric, you and I talked numerous times, and especially November, December, when the dredge was imminent, and then of course, they ran out of time, as you described, because of North Sea dredge that took longer than expected. Andrew said that, where I'm totally confused is that I was being told that the channel was being moved west, the spoils are being put at the end, and there was no need for additional rock revetment. And after November 2019, we pretty much were told that there's no revetment and we're going to build the beach back up. And that's what Robert Young wanted, and that's what Andrew Walker wanted, and that's what the homeowners wanted, of course. But then, and by doing that, of course, the road wouldn't keep eroding away, and ultimately the homeowners would have access back to the beach to the east, which is where we're supposed to be able to go, and the whole community. But it seems that Andrew, in speaking with Bill Hillman, said that actually a letter that you guys had to initiate this request, that the DC is not allowed to come to you and initiate something, and that the trustees were supposed to send a letter, a written request to Bill Hillman or to DPW, and then from there they would make the modification request to the DC. But Bill Hillman told Andrew Walker, that no request was ever made. And so then all of this was just talk. It was never actually something that was in the works. So that's my question is, what exactly happened? Is that the case? Or, if you could first clear up that confusion of ours.
There was always discussions on this. I can't comment on what Mr. Hillman has said to other people. There's a lot of hearsay going on, but we have always wanted that channel dredged. And we weren't going to restore that beach until the county went in there to dredge. Just as we restored the beach the last time around.
Well, no, you mean you're talking about Chesterfield moving sand? Is that what you're talking about?
Moved the sand back because of all the sand that was placed there by the highway department. And we put the sand in front of the road ending, and then it all washed back out again. So obviously something had to be done to stop that from happening in the meantime. So that's why these smaller rocks were allowed as a wave break to lessen the velocity of the waves coming in there, carrying sand further back down again into the channel. Someone had to do something, and we did it. And we intend on moving. So, nobody else is doing it. We're doing it.
But again, the confusion comes back to, and when we came to you, as the community turned out in large force in November 2019, we expressed what Andrew Walker said, which was that the channel should be moved west and the spoils should all be put at the end of the road. And he does not want a rock revetment. There was no need for a rock revetment, and that had to be done. And we begged and pleaded for a holistic solution and for a meeting with DPW and DEC and town of Southampton and the homeowners to do this. And we wouldn't be where we are because, we're already obviously I don't mean we wouldn't be where we are in terms of the state. We'd be where we are in terms of where we are today, because that could have all gotten started. We wouldn't have had this rock revetment. A modification permit would have been put in place, and supposedly, and we begged and pleaded for that. I know Ann said I listened. Again, we didn't know about this rock revetment. No one told us. I'm confused about that. So my first question related to that, then, if we're going on to that subject, is I'm confused. If there's a modification permit, or is this a new permit? Because now it's on trustee land. The original permit was on homeowners' land. I understand it's our responsibility if it's a modification to keep up with it. Though we had a lot of conversations, you and I, and no one told me that, we should be aware there's going to be a meeting.
You want me to text Charles?
So my question then is, why wasn't there public notice and the posting if this is on public land? Isn't this a new permit? Wasn't that a new permit application?
No, it was the application that we initially were reviewing. The first application was rock gabions, rocks in cages, raised up much higher. We decided to do something similar to what was done at Little Neck, put smaller rocks there so that they could be configured in a way to absorb some of the wave energy, that it wouldn't wash the end of the road out completely, and to tail it off with smaller rock apron to protect the end of the road. Now, we also put a covenant on there that the rocks have to be covered by sand and planted. And if you remember, Jill, I don't know if you remember when I met with George Hammerth and Karen Grolick to put the material from Honey Pot Pond originally, and they said no. Now, George is retired, Karen's no longer there, and we have Andrew Walker. Evidently, he's got a little bit of a different philosophy in the last 6 months or 8 months of putting deposition material below the spring mean high water mark. That was always our benchmark, to put that above the spring mean high water mark. But Andrew's considering doing a much different type of a project on the end of a road. Now, that there's no deposition site specifically for that road end. I tried to get it originally, they said no. So that would be an all new or amendment to the original permit that the county has for the dredging of Far and Middle Pond. Secondly, we also need to amend the Far Pond dredging to include an excavator, access from the west side, and moving the channel to the western side of the template where it's dredging. If we do that, we do not have the ability to take that material and put it on Far Pond because it's going to go west towards Atterbury Road. So we're going to need another pool of sand, which we have a very large stockpile between Middle and Far Pond. We've done the dredging for the last 30 years. There's a huge stockpile. So we would need to move some of that material down the end of Far Pond. And that's, like I told you repeatedly several times, that's the end goal, is to establish the rock revetment, have it covered with sand, put the rock apron in front of the road to protect the road, and then to re-nourish it with sand. We're only partially through this whole project. Some of the key things is the county needs to amend their dredging of Far Pond to move them, for other access, which is separate of the rock revetment project.
Okay, so not to disagree, but Karen Grolnick has been gone for over a decade. And the conversations with the DEC were not 6 to 8 months ago. They were looking back way over a year. It was before the November 2019 hearing, and the permit was new permit issued 2019 to has 10 years to 2029. So I totally hear you, but it's just little details that are a little different.
Not once in my lifetime on one of these dredging projects have I ever had the DEC say to us in our township that you can put the material below the spring high watermark. This talking to Andrew Walker now, this is the first time they've ever said it to me as a trustee. And I've worked on it 15-year projects here, and I'm very familiar with dredging throughout the whole town. So this is a new philosophy that they've come up with. So now we're going to have to figure out how to do this the best way. First off, secure the road end, secure Mr. Malcolmson's property, reduce the amount of erosion there, and put the sand there. There's a step system that we have to go through.
Okay, so explain to me so I can feel comfortable then. We have a rock revetment now that's put in, sand behind it, you planted. That's now cut off 2/3 of the road end of a community to have access to the beach. The other third are rocks strewn down, which has cut off our access. So basically, I have no access anymore. I guess where I'm confused then is where you're putting sand. How is you have a perpendicular structure now to the bay? How is there not going to be erosion from that? I think I'm not understanding.
Well, I mean, of course there's going to be erosion there because there's wave energy and sea level is rising, but we're trying to reduce the amount of erosion and reduce the frequency that we have to put sand back there. That's the goal. I mean, you're looking at that road end. It's not very highly elevated more than the bay. Unfortunately, every wave that breaks there literally goes right to the road end. So that rock apron that you're talking about, that you're saying doesn't allow you to walk down the beach, is going to break up some of that wave energy and protect the road end. So we will not have to put sand at the road end like the highway department has done for the last couple of years. We're going to be placing the sand in front of that rock revetment and along the shore there to hopefully reconstruct a small beach there. That's the goal.
So what is the time frame? So no, take that back. So the first question then is, will you be submitting a request to DPW to have the two modifications done? One is to move the channel west. I understand that it's been the measurements that Mr. Walker gave me were about 130 feet, that it's moved east, center to center, and that it could incrementally be moved. It should incrementally be moved west with each dredge. And two, the other modification to the permit would be to put the spoils at the end of the road. So will you be submitting a formal letter to DPW to make request to DC?
I have been contacted by Scott Hillary and Peter, their second in charge from Suffolk County DPW, this morning to have a 3 or a 3:30 phone conversation with myself, Eric, and a couple of members of Suffolk County DPW to work for the amendment and have them send over any material that we can help them with to facilitate a quicker movement of this permit. So that's saying, yes, I have another meeting after this meeting. and a phone call to follow up on. So Eric had a conversation last week with Mr. Walker and Scott Hillary. I was not part of it. Eric filled me in. I've had conversations prior to that. So we're going to hopefully have a conversation this afternoon to see what we need specifically to amend this permit for the moving of the channel to the west, the amendment of the dredging and placement of material from Far Pond Road east all the way to Middle Pond.
Got it. Ed, I don't know
Wonderful.
if you
Good
still
to
hear
hear.
me. It's Andrew. Jill, 1 second. Can I just jump in 1 second?
Sure.
Yeah.
So it sounds like everybody's is on the same page for the longer term solution and how to move the channel gradually west, as Jill stated. Is there something that could be done now? Because I think Andrew Walker's on the Zoom call, and maybe he could jump in if need be. Is there anything to do now that could expedite a permit modification so that something could happen in May so that we can actually have access to the pond? I mean, again, I mentioned the other day, I went in there. I mean, high tide is about 1.5 feet lower than it's ever been. And even at high tide, there's no water in there. So it sounds similar to the conversation you were having with the other group prior to us, but it's like a sewer. It's the water goes in and the water doesn't come out. And it's unless that channel gets dredged, it's such a problem.
Let me clarify that for it's not only the long term, it's the short term also. What has to be modified on the permit is to allow for a land-based excavator to dig the channel. That's it. The way the permit reads now is that it can only use hydraulic excavator, which is a dredge. The amendment for the short term is to allow for a machine to go in there and open the channel up this season.
Thank you.
So at the last meeting, you talked about 2 words needed to be modified. That's what it was. Those 2 words.
That's it. Or excavator.
Yes,
we've got this low tide dredging channel problem throughout the entire bay system. My phone's blowing up. My emails are jam packed. Our low tides, as the gentleman said, are running like 1.5 feet, couple of feet lower than they're normally used to seeing them. You've got boat yards with low tides with all the boats at the dock that they're sitting totally out of water like it's the Bay of Fundy, just sitting there. You got people that are trying to come into channels that normally they can get into, they can't get into, and you can walk so far out now at the low tides. It's been unbelievable. So these problems are getting this cycle that's going on. It's bad everywhere, and we need dredging all over the place. And it's good to hear that perhaps there's some philosophy changes, because as you're all aware, deposition sites are a problem in being successful in the dredging projects. And the problem is not going to go away by itself. We're going to have to find and work and collaborate with the Department of Environmental Conservation and everybody involved so that we can remedy this as best as we can. It's heavy lift, I understand, but the problem is getting worse. And we're going to have to work on these things all throughout the entire system. It's bad.
Scott, can I just come in there for a second? Just 1 second. My name is Mark Haves. I'm on Far Pond, and I just wanted to make sure that all the other trustees have actually can see pictures that I've taken of what the situation is, and maybe I don't know if everyone's been down to Far Pond, but in low tide. But I think it might be helpful. Eric, do you think it would be helpful if I showed everyone a pictures?
You can show a picture. I've been down there. Ed's been down.
We had the Bay Constables do a site visit there 3 weeks ago and do depth soundings and send a whole report over to the office on Far and Middle Pond. Middle Pond is as bad as Far Pond. So I'm dealing with both of these. We're dealing with both of these.
And the reason part is channel, because there is no channel, and to incur liability to the town and to people there. So that's why it wasn't marked until there.
Did they by chance? Oh, sorry. Did they by chance go into Honey Pot also, Ed, or just Far and Middle?
No, just Far and Middle. Because the day that they were down, you could not get to Honey Pot because the tide was so low. There was no water in the bay.
That's a whole nother problem.
Well, do you think it's allocation of resources in light of COVID, in light of communities not getting funding, and we have to prioritize?
Well, I would tell you that the town of Southampton, I guess, Community Preservation Fund has unbelievable amount of money, thank God, because of all the transfers within the town. I don't know if you guys have any access to that money. And certainly our taxes haven't gone down. And even though we've had a lot of continued building in the town and a lot of more taxables. So I would think that Suffolk County with the PPP loans and the money from the federal government, there should be some money to take care of this hopefully soon. Thank you, guys.
That's a double-edged sword, though, with that Community Preservation Fund, because to my understanding, they generally, those properties that are along the shoreline that perhaps would be excellent places to be dewatering dredge spoils and alleviating some of this problem, it becomes something that's not allowed, to my knowledge. We've been shut out many times on utilizing those properties. So sometimes when we're making purchases along the shoreline, it's a terrific thing to be preserving this. But there's also a harm to the environment when you're locking up water bodies because you don't have logistically acceptable locations to be pumping or dewatering dredge spoils for a net gain to the environment. So, there's a ton of money in the Community Preservation Fund, and a lot of the projects that can be done are in the wheelhouse of the trustees, and for the benefit of the environment and the taxpayers, they should be. But when you're also creating, a situation where you're making it harder logistically to be successful in these projects, you really got to take a hard look at it. And I think that it only is going to work out if we all do collaborate around the table and find solutions to these problems. Okay. And that's where it has to, you have to start, and then you have to focus, and then you have to be successful. It can't be hit and miss and this and that. Everybody's got to work together because it's not going to get any easier. This problem's not going to just go away on its own. Okay. So
Thank you.
I hear you loud and clear. We're just trying to find
Scott
solutions to big problems.
Yeah. What
Well,
Scott
Scott-
pretty much said, if you purchase it with CPF funds, you cannot use it for a deposition site for dredging projects. So all these properties that are bought around the water that are wonderful deposition sites to put material, dry it out, and get rid of it, we are not allowed to use that property for that use.
We just lost
We're gonna need to
another in Flanders, and a classic example is the East River, which holds with several marinas there, have a problem. We have an excellent place, an old duck farm full of old duck lagoons. We could dredge that piece, but it's owned by CPF. Now we can't use it for a spoil site. So it becomes there's absolutely no spoil site anywhere within a half a mile away to put anything, and we're stopped dead.
Look, you got marinas, Weesa Creek, you got several boatyards and marinas. These people pay a lot of taxes to service that's much needed for our waterfront community. You got Smith's Creek in Hampton Bays, the same thing. You try and get in there, even with outboard driven boats at mid to heading, to low tide, you're churning that muck that you're talking about the whole way in and the whole way out. Okay. Where are we going to pump this material to? Where are we going to get the budget for this? How are we going to work the logistics? I'm getting complaints, and my emails are blowing up with photographs of boats sitting in these boatyards that are in the mud. They're not even floating. Okay.
Well, even if we had the money, Scott, we can't do anything.
I understand, but
you need a
when
permit,
there's a
Scott.
change of philosophy, perhaps when you're talking about maybe finding some solutions with, like Ed said, in his 15 years of doing this, they've never, allowed materials to be put in certain areas. Well, maybe it's time to come to the realization that we got to get outside that box that we've been in because it's not working. Okay. And we're going to have to figure it out because the problem's not going to get any better. It's not going to go away by itself.
Well, the state representatives are tired from they hear from us, but I think what be done is start writing the governor and the people who actually have power to affect some changes because we can talk them blue in the face when they start getting constituents calling up left and right. Maybe something will get done. Some relaxation, maybe a town-wide dredging permit or something like that.
I think it's simple. It's a matter of respect. It's like everybody's got a job to do. It's like I got the watch and one little piece of the watch doesn't work and I might as well throw it out. It doesn't tell time. Everybody's got to do their piece. us, the DEC, the county, everybody has got to get in line and work together to solve this problem. And it seems as though it's a struggle when it shouldn't be a struggle. It should be a sensible collaboration on being successful in doing good things for the environment and serving the people, of the community. And it
The
shouldn't be that
environment
tough.
is so important. Environment is so important.
They're all hand in hand. So let's just work together, find solutions to some very tough problems, and let's just stay focused. And I think it'll all work out. Does it happen overnight? Absolutely not.
Well,
But you have to stay focused.
Yeah, it sounds like this is Andrew again. It sounds like, for, the October, November, December cycle, everybody's on the same page and there is a good collaboration between the DPW, the trustees, Andrew Walker, the DEC. But is there anything where Andrew's on the Zoom? Is there anything that could be done now to expedite? I know the DPW said they don't have the resources to deal with this in May. Is there a quicker fix? And if even possible, I don't know if the DEC could turn around that quick a modification. Is there any resources to deal with this in May? If the DEC miraculously could change the modification and get a permit to the trustees, do the trustees have the ability and the resources to a quick fix solution to at least do the dredging and then longer term a comprehensive approach that everyone is a part of in the October, November, December cycle, which is a longer term fix? Can we?
So Andrew,
as I said last meeting, we're ready to go with the machinery. We have in contact with the contractor. And as I said in the beginning of the meeting, I spoke to Mr. Hillman and offered that we would have one of our consultants help him out with drawing up the plans, whatever he needed, and then they can just give it to them and they can just put their name on it.
So Andrew
so Eric, what needs to happen for that to happen?
Andrew, if I could butt in a second back.
All you have to do is having a conversation with them again today, and they're supposed to ask them to send us what they have so far, drawings, soundings, the rest of the stuff. We'll look it over. We'll have our consultant look at it, and if necessary, put in the language and draw and have the renderings ready to go. We'll hand it back to
county
W, and they can put their name on it and send it in.
So Andrew, so if I could butt in, and if Andrew Walker, I don't know if he wants to speak or I know he's listening. This is what Andrew described to me, exactly what you're talking about, Eric. And he said that he would work with you and to turn it around really quick and bringing in a crawler excavator or other to come in land-based, to come in, like you had said, from the west side, to put the material in dump trucks and drive it around to the east side. And that his understanding was that while DPW wasn't able to do this in the short term, that you could, that if you would be able to, you could, and he would work with you diligently to get the application to the point where DEC, can put their stamp on it. And, if you'd like to speak, then, I will stop.
I've had discussions with them of that nature.
Great. Did you want, I don't know if Andrew wants to speak. If not, I'll keep going.
Appropriate for him to have him in on a conversation, put him on the spot right now in a fluid situation until we have discussions with the county.
No problem. Okay.
Yeah,
So
one other thing I can say that I've already looked into the west side access. There are no plovers. There are no turns on that side. It is town property. It has enough beach to acquire a deposition site, which would be above the spring mean high water, and the material could be laid out in a way that it could benefit the whole entire community to the west. As far as moving it in dump trucks from the west side down the beach in dump trucks, you're going to ask a project that's going to probably cost $40,000 or $50,000. That's a funding issue. I don't know where that money would come from, but getting the channel dredged with an amendment for an excavator, if the DEC were amenable and we could get the plans to the county, that would be something I think we could acquire, at least doing for navigation and access to that pond this year.
Yeah.
Thank you.
so if nothing is done this year, then before November, December.
I'm saying nothing's going to get done. Something's going to get done.
Okay, well.
We're the only ones that are doing it. No one else is doing it. So we're getting all this criticism on this. and we're the only one that's stuck our neck out to do something.
No,
Okay.
that's not what I'm referring to. If sand can't, if you dredge the channel and the sand can't be moved to be put at the end of the road for the short-term fix, what can, I know that you approved money to move sand with Chesterfield. I know Ed said it was going to be done and it was approved.
Yeah.
Is there a date that we're looking at? Can you give that we could feel comfortable to know that will happen?
It depends on if the amendment to the dredging comes through, because we're not going to do anything that's going to move sand and then have duplication of machinery going down there with mobilization and demobilization costs.
Okay, but that sand will be moved sometime this spring. That sand will be moved back to east to the end of the road.
When we get done having these ridiculously high tides and the storms that we've had for the last 3 months, putting it there in the last 3 months, it would have vanished in weeks. So we did it this time last year. It's when the storms stop happening. The tides aren't as high and we don't have as much issues with the weather. And we need a nice low day with a couple low tides. So we get logistically, you have to figure that out too, Joe. So there's a lot of moving parts to these projects.
Okay, as long as I hear that we're going to be doing it this spring when it's opportune time for it. I understand.
I've already got a resolution approved for funding of it, so that part's done.
Great, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the other question is, I'm just trying to understand the comparison of Little Neck to the end of Far Pond, because I know you were, when I listened, weeks ago, when I learned about the November 23rd hearing, it kept being referenced that this is going to be like Little Neck. And I don't know if, first question is, has anybody been down to Little Neck of the trustees down the end?
Every day that I go to Far Pond, I go to Little Neck. That beach, once we put the filter cloth and the rocks down and put the larger rocks, it actually has built up to the northern part of that project, and it actually has, Spartina in the bay. A meadow has appeared there, so it has been a positive, step in what we've done there, and it's very similar to what's at Far Pond with a channel and currents and tides. So it has worked there. It's taken a few years for it to take hold and to produce what we hopefully thought was going to happen, but it has. So if you look on Google Earth for the last 10 years or 15 years, you could see how it was larger, it got smaller, and now it's starting to come back and get larger, and it has worked.
Okay, because I hear you. I'm down there every day on my runs, and
well, go on Google Earth
and there is no beach, and the road sign is mostly at some underwater to some level, except of course.
Well, that's because the water keeps coming higher and higher and higher. The land hasn't risen up. It's not going anywhere, unfortunately. So we got to do something to slow the wave energy down that's taking away from the land. So that's these projects. They're not designed to protect 100% of the property. They're just designed to slow the wave energy down and protect what's behind them. It's inevitable that sea level rise is going to take over the island. Yeah. But we're just trying to slow it down a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, and I got one more
waterfront property.
Yeah.
I got one more question, and I'll shut up. And I'm not gonna like my last question, but you talked numerous times on the November 23rd meeting about that this rock revetment, which is now on your property, not the homeowner's property, that you will monitor it, and if need be, the rocks will be moved or removed at the owner's expense. So what is the criteria and what kind of time frame are you looking at of monitoring to determine that you need to move it or remove it? Are we talking a year? Are we talking years? Are we talking, what, can you give me some understanding of your science?
It's at least a couple years looking at what happened at Little Neck and how that transformed itself. If you do it less than a year, you're not even going to prove the project even worked. You know what I mean? Because we haven't even finished. The project isn't finished yet. We're about halfway through it. We got the rock revetment there. We got the stone apron. We're going to put sand there. We're going to modify the permit to use, hopefully have the road end as a deposition site, moving the channel to the west on Far Pond and putting that material on the beach west, or maybe bringing some material free. So there's a lot of, I would say the project is about half done as we speaking right now.
Too many moving parts.
Thank you, Ed.
So when it's done, we expect, you expect that we're gonna have a return of our beach and our access to all of the beach to the east that, we always had,
I
years
can't,
back?
I can't say 100%. And like I told you previously, that this is going to be an ongoing maintenance probably for years until we establish that whole beach with that rock revetment behind it. I don't know how long it's going to take, but I mean, as long as I'm on the board, I'm willing to, do what we can to make this project functional for the community, channel dredging for the navigation of the and the environmental issues of poor water circulation. So there's a lot of parameters, Jill, that we're dealing with. And for me to say that this is going to happen in May 3rd, 2021, and tomorrow this is going to happen, I can't predict the future. We could get another Hurricane Sandy, or we could get 10 years of tranquil weather, and the beach will build up naturally by itself. So there's a lot of parameters that I can't, I can't really
Exactly.
Speak about.
Did Rob Young give you any measurements or anything more scientific?
No. He can't predict how an ocean level rise is going to be.
No.
And
he didn't give you
any
measurements of that.
dredging projects that are going to increase the wave energy.
One thing you have to remember, and we all have to remember, every time that the Shinnecock Inlet is dredged and those sandbars are reduced in height, the wave energy, that is the long period waves that come from the ocean, are not intercepted anymore by that inner bar. They literally come right across Shinnecock Bay and they crash into the Shinnecock Hills or, Little Neck Road or, Far Pond Road. So that's another whole issue with erosion, is that imperceptible wave that comes in and just eats away at the beaches along the hills there. I mean, I've seen it over 30 years, how it's, on a full moon high tide and the bay's like a lake, but there's a swell that runs across there. And
they're using that material to
yeah.
remedy an erosion problem in another part of the town, right?
Yeah.
So it's a constant. This is a constant issue. It's always going to be a management situation. And
yeah, I mean, that material got moved out of the East Channel, and 290,000 cubic yards of material ended up going on the Shinnecock Indian Reservation, where the largest living shoreline project in the state of New York was done through Cornell and the Sandy Relief Fund. I mean, it's literally the whole entire, from Hetty Creek to Fort Pond. There are rocks. There was a channel dredged into a couple of the ponds there. There were fences put up. There was grass plantings there. There are oyster reefs offshore. So they tried a holistic approach over there, and it's only partially been done because they still have to put more oyster reefs there and monitor the whole project for a few years.
If I could, Don Schwartz, to go back to the rock revetments. In November of 2019, we hired Rob Young, who was opposed to hardening using rock revetments or using anything similar to that. He thought that was the cause of it. And his letter to the trustees on November 13th of 2019 indicated that previous losses are limiting public access. Affirming this harm by allowing the increased hardening of that shoreline would guarantee continued impacts. He was opposed to anything hardening the structures down there, which you've done, indicating that that's what Rob Young said, and he said the opposite in November of 2019.
I'm going to have to correct that, because what he's talking about was hardened structures is armoring the Malcolmson's property to the north and then across the road. This is completely different. This is a wave break. And the reason why we didn't put 10 or 20 ton boulders there was to keep it to a reduced size, that if in the case of, as we monitor the situation, we with a small piece of machinery can move those. Doesn't have to be permanent. It's a wave break to reduce the wave energy that hits those hardened structures in the first place that does cause downdrift erosion. So there is a difference.
And the rocks that Malcolmson put back, hardening that area.
Malcolmson didn't add to his piece. These are, we didn't allow it to go further up. It's a wave break that basically mimics what was out there before that got washed away. That little bit of Spartina alterna flora with that raised sill a little bit, right, Ed?
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, if we were to do nothing on Far Pond Road, within a couple of years, Mr. Malcolmson wouldn't get to his house. The next property owner wouldn't get to because the road and the property would literally wash out.
Yeah.
I mean, these rocks were given back in the 80s or 90s. Prior to that, in the 60s, there was a bulkhead there. So, I mean, this was done long before, I or the board sits there now. We're, governing over this. So what we're trying to do is find out a remedy to what past practices have been done. And, you have to apply something to see if it works. And society wants instant gratification, which I wish I could say to Jill and the whole community that the beach is going to build up and everything is going to be wonderful. Reality dictates, and I'm a commercial fisherman. I'm on the water and I see erosion. I see bulkheads falling over, docks getting broken apart, a lot of erosion and a lot of things happening. Reality is that you have to try something and have a plan that if it doesn't work, to make some changes along the way to try to make it work. I mean, you're working with Mother Nature. It's not easy.
Understood. I just have one other question or comment on the on our side. You live on the other side of the street that Jill lives on. They took away all the bushes and grasses when they came down. Those were all taken out or destroyed. I don't know if it was Into Science who did it. Will everything be replanted down the side of the road?
I think Mr. Malcolmson was asked by Marty Shea to revegetate that strip from your house. There's an old hedgerow that runs along there.
Yeah.
And to revegetate along there and plant some grass and to clean up the area. I believe he was asked to do it. He was contacting a landscape. I actually met with a landscaper down there that I know, giving him a price and an idea of what to do. So okay. My thought is that, when a trustee project is done and something's damaged in the environment, we usually make the contractor go back and clean up the area and make it, like it was, prior to them doing the project. So I will be monitoring that, and I will have a conversation with Mr. Malcolmson probably after this meeting if I get done early enough.
That would be great. Thank you very much.
Access for our machinery too. That's not going access for our machinery to do any remediation work down there.
So you guys have another meeting after this?
I got a phone call with the county.
We should.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Any additional comments? Anybody else want to speak at public portion? Okay, let's move into our resolutions there. So we actually have two of the meetings that we're going to try to possibly combine with the county and the DEC today. Hopefully we can do that. If it's not too late, we can kill two birds with one stone. Okay. First resolution is resolution 2021-100. Now, we discussed this at work session. This is to modify upon approval of this particular dock in West Hampton on 40 Griffin Avenue. It was on site inspection when they applied for a completion notice. It was noticed by the trustees that the ramp appeared to be a little bit too steep. So we ordered the ramp to be modified by dropping two of the girders down to make it a better slope. So it was a field correction. So what we want to do is codify it in our permits. So it's a type 2 action, and we discussed it. So I'd like to make a motion to be approved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Ed's next.
I'm sorry, second on that, Eric?
Yes.
Thank you.
Scott, can you read my, I can't get a transfer from my
Okay,
town. phone to my
you've got,
personal.
Edward Warner has 2021-101 trustee resolution. It's for Catherine Galanti at 12 Canal Way, Hampton Bays, New York, Suffolk County, tax map 900-322-2-10. It's located off of Smith's Creek. Remove 100 linear feet of timber bulkhead, replace it with 100 linear feet of vinyl bulkhead in place, raise the top of the bulkhead to meet with the upland grade of the property. Install 2 10-foot returns, remove 10-foot boardwalk, bench and steps, establish a 10-foot wide gravel buffer upland to the bulkhead. Recovery dredge up to 10 foot seaward of bulkhead, removing 25 cubic yards dredge material. Trucking 20 cubic yards clean fill and gravel, all dredge material and fill to be placed in a 10-foot buffer. Remove 2 5-foot sections of fence at the bulkhead to allow pass and repass. Install a 4-foot wide by 6-foot platform, a 3 by 14 ramp, and a 6 by 20 float for safe to access the waterway. Add 2 5 by 30 areas of native species plants with 40 by 60 gravel pass and repass path. 16-inch square stepping stone footpath. Install 4 ladders and a life ring for the premises located at 12 Canal Way, Hampton Bays, New York. Does that sound about right, Ed?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, so I'll make a
Recommend-
motion.
Second.
Seconded?
No, who made the motion?
Scott.
Scott made the motion.
Seconding, okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Trustee Resolution 2021-102, renewal, second renewal for the application for permit number GP 000058 at Redwood Anchorage Inc., 40 Redwood Road, Village of Sag Harbor, Suffolk County Tax Map 903-1-3-19.1, body of water, Sag Harbor Cove. This is for to renew work that was previously permitted to re-instruct in place 160 feet, 66 feet of bulkheading with vinyl sheathing, 10-foot wide buffer and native species. I'd like to recommend its approval.
Second.
Okay, Ed seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Carried.
Trustee Resolution 2021-103, application 121 Cobb Isle Road, 121 Cobb Isle Road in Watermill, Suffolk County Tax Map 900-160-3-31, body of water, Mecox Bay. This is to add a kayak rack to the existing dock, floating dock at this premises. I'd like to recommend its approval.
Second.
Got one quick question on this. This is the one, it's still not the one with the metal, right? From Int Science.
No, this is the one that they were gonna do with, I believe you're gonna change it, right?
With the wood, right? Low profile.
That's what we recommended, Billy.
Yeah. Just want to make sure.
James, can you help me with that?
Just bring up.
Hey, the guy from InterScience got his hand up.
Jim Walker's here. Could you let him on, please, Charles?
Got it.
Well, we should have modified drawings. That should show right there.
That's right.
As long as it's the same permit we're talking about.
We were sent specs this morning. Jim.
I'm here.
Hey, Jim.
Okay. The specs you sent this morning for the rack, I'm gonna share them with everyone.
Yeah. Now, Bill, at the end of the last conversations that we had on this, I told you I would submit one that's flat and can meet the DEC permit. So it is a flat kayak rack, and it is stainless steel, and it bolts to the side of the existing dock, and it won't stick a kayak up in the air, and it does everything that you asked.
Okay.
Bill, we submitted it this morning. Because it took me a long time to find this stuff. It bolts in two places, on top of the dock and at the side of the dock, and it holds a kayak. And I think it protects the visual impact of a dock in the manner that you were expecting.
What is it, raise up or something like that? I mean,
that's just to catch the kayak. You lay a kayak down on top of the black part of the two stainless steel things. And,
right.
You know, these people could install a custom stainless steel kayak rack, but more or less it's two by fours that stick out from the dock to catch a kayak. And it doesn't stack them up in the air. In the manner that Bill was concerned about, we're avoiding it. You have the design that I sent this morning. The reason why I sent it was so hopefully the Board of Trustees could get through a project quickly without too much stress.
This is what the DC is mandating?
Yeah, well, you know, Scott, that's an interesting question because it seems like depending on which project or which permit that was reviewed by the state, you get a different answer. I'm absolutely sure that they've also issued conventional timber kayak racks on a large number of pieces of property, but I had this one and I had 117 immediately to the north, and Christian Nyeko blocked the standard timber kayak rack, which I think is fine, and told us to change. So we have to change. This is a modest change that won't offend the trustees and won't be visible from anywhere else. I think stainless steel or tropical hardwood probably is more environmentally benign if it's stainless steel. I think it's okay. I think it's useful, and it's something that you may want to consider on other docks.
Well, I don't think Bill was talking about the actual material involved so much.
The height of it.
Yeah, so we have no heights now. There's a million different kind of kayak racks that you can buy that bolt to the side of a dock. Most of them stack kayaks up into the air, 3 or 4 high. Bill correctly identified that as a visual impact, so we changed gears and we gave you something that's flat. You put a kayak along the side of the dock. The people can slide the kayak onto the dock and down the ramp and onto the float where they can launch the kayak. You have to remember that these people had a kayak rack built and it was sitting in the wetlands buffer, and they are not allowed to have anything in the wetlands buffer. So we told them to move the kayak, and it's behind the house. The kayak rack that they have is not useful. They can't use it. They can't get it anywhere within the 75-foot wide buffer that was imposed by the Environment Division. So we have to give them something. Here's something that's fine and doesn't provide any visual impact, and it will help the people with their kayaks. I think it's a good solution.
What do you think, Bill?
I'm fine with it, but here it goes again, like you've been saying, Eric. You know, the DC's telling us what to do, and it's, you know, we live out here. It's all up. You know, we're responsible. We see it. Ed sees it when he goes by. I see it when I go by. Scott sees it. Ann sees it. You see it, and we have to live with this. And the DC, you know, they don't come out here.
Well, I could tell you what's wrong. Here's what's wrong. Okay. I did make several phone calls on this to try and get what's the rationale? Tell me. Sell it to me.
I can't figure that out, Scott.
No, I played telephone tag for a little bit, but then I sent an email. Just please explain to me the rationale on this. Well, I got no explanation. I think that the landowner, the trustees, as a matter of respect, are at the very least, you know, do an explanation if we're making a deviation from the norm. You know, whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, whether it's good or it's bad, whether it's helpful or not, give us the rationale. We generally have gone with similar material to what's been on the docks.
Yeah, a 4x4 works fine. Two of them.
Send a note to the trustees, hey, we think, this is great because of whatever. A lot of times you buy things and then you open it up and you go, well, not for sale in the state of California because of cancer causing agents that are involved in this product. Well, whatever. I don't know. This is just another product that you buy and bolt to the dock. Fine. Give us a rationale. That's all. Simple. There is none.
Yep.
So,
And the DC has a record of doing that. Look, the fish ladder, the dredging, they won't give us the answer,
Bill, if I showed you the communication from the DEC, you would be embarrassed. It is a sad idea. They sent me a picture of a recycled plastic thing that you would see on a bulkhead in Riverhead at the town park. It's really unfortunate. However, the suggestion that Ed Warner just said, where 2 4x4s are good enough, is correct. Here's two pieces of stainless steel. They're going to be bolted solid to the dock. It's going to hold a kayak. We're all done.
Yeah,
it's less tropical hardwood.
Yeah,
I think it's a good solution.
Save the rainforest.
Save the rainforest.
Save the DSC.
Well, or maybe, listen, we're mandating a lot of tropical hardwood be used. I'm sure there's a lot of cutoffs and they could build it out of the scrap tropical hardwood that's already here. It's already got the carbon footprint coming from the rainforest all the way here to Long Island, New York. Use the resources to the best that you already have. So there's 2 ways to look at it. So whatever. I just would have liked an explanation. That's all. We didn't get one.
I agree with you, Scott. Why?
Yeah, I'd like to add one thing. Take from this all these conversations with the environmental business and the save this and save that. Everybody loses the concept of we are part of the environment too. We're part of it too. Anyway. All right.
So perhaps if in this instance, since these residents do not have a kayak rack to use at this point and previously did, if we could move this forward, but continue to address the DEC and investigate what their reasoning is for this change. And Rex, maybe Jim, if you would help us to follow up on that, and perhaps Scott, if you could too, and I will as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, the bottom line at the end of the day is it meets Blue Book regulations, correct?
Fine. It's fine.
Right?
Yeah.
So it meets Blue Book regulations, so it's okay. I just think that if there was a rationale, you could share it with another regulatory agency, authority, what have you. That's all. It's very simple. But
Great.
I'm fine with it. They really should apply the science or rationale.
So I'd like to recommend the approval.
Second.
Bill seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 You.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Jim. See you around.
Trustee Resolution 2021-104, application of 188 Redwood Road LLC, 188 Redwood Road, Village of Sag Harbor, Suffolk County Tax Map 903-1-2-6, body of water, Sag Harbor Cove. This is to allow a 24-foot extension in lieu of the approved 16-foot extension on the existing south side of the bulkhead. I'd like to recommend its approval.
Second.
Ed seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Trustee Resolution 2021-105, application of James and Nevitt Jenkins, 9 Brennan's Moor, Watermill, New York, Suffolk County Tax Map 900-103-1-64, body of water, Calf Creek. This is to reconstruct a catwalk, a ramp, and a floating dock. We discussed it at work session, and I'd like to recommend its approval.
Second.
Ed seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Am I up?
Yep.
We've got You okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Trustee Resolution 2021-106, it's warrant number 8 of 2021. It is for $15,181.97. The breakdown is as follows. Call ahead, $50. East Islip Lumber Company, $2,498.71. Safe Harbor Publications, $209.40. Mercury Marine, $10,891.26. Walsh Marine Products, Inc., $1,532.60 for a grand total of $15,181.97. So we got to pay our bills, and hats off to the office for Lisa and Lisa and everybody in the office that was able to keep things moving. We had a little change up over there, and it's good that we're able to actually have a warrant, pay our bills, because it actually takes a lot of steps to make it all happen. I want to thank everybody in the office that learned new process and stepped up to keep the faith and keep us moving and keep the lights on, because it'd be harder to do this with all the lights off. So
Yes.
thank you.
I'll extend the board's thank you to Lisa Kana also. She was a
Yes.
tremendous help for stepping up to the plate as well. Thank you.
That being said, we need a second to.
Second.
Okay, Ed seconded it.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Trustee Resolution 2021-107. This is a notice of public hearing on amendment of Blue Book, Article 7, Section 53, Pure Line and Designated Areas. And this one is Section F, Sag Harbor Cove. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Freeholders and Commonality of the Town of Southampton direct that a public hearing shall be held on Monday, May 17th at 1 p.m. via video conference to hear any and all persons either for or against proposed amendment of the Blue Book entitled Pure Line in Designated Areas, Sag Harbor Cove. Section 1, legislative intent. The Board of Trustees of the Freeholders and Commonality of Town of Southampton desire to allow for sufficient water depth of 2.5 feet at average high water line for installation of floating docks in Sag Harbor Cove. Amendment, Article 7 of Rules and Regulations for the Management and Products of the Waters in Town of Southampton is hereby amended by deleting the stricken words and adding the underlined words as follows.
Okay, but this pertains to all, you don't have to read the whole thing because it's all.
No, I was just going to read the.
Right, only section F is modified.
Okay. Thank you. Section F, Sag Harbor Cove docks, including floating docks, are not to exceed 60 is crossed out, and we will be discussing in a public hearing 75 feet in length measured from average high water into Sag Harbor Cove. So this public hearing will take place May 17th at 1 p.m. via video conference. I'd like to recommend the approval to set this public hearing.
Second.
Ed seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So, okay, so now we have, I have another meeting on top of this now, so we have 3 going on with the county and CPF. So anybody really have anything else right now, real quick?
No, in the interest of time in your meetings.
Just really quickly, Mecox is open. It was opened Friday, April 30th. It remains open. This morning it has dropped, I believe, about 6 inches. And it was still open this morning. SAG will need to be opened shortly, and we are making progress on the Mill Pond water quality application. So yeah, that's
Okay.
it. Actually, wait, just one more thing. Just for people that are driving or walking on the beach, just as I'm down at the cuts, just please be mindful of the plover fencing, both when you're driving and when you're walking on the beach. I noticed in quite a few areas in the last week or so where either dogs, people, or vehicles have gone inside the fenced off plover areas. And just keep in mind that Southampton trustees run a super successful plover program. And if we didn't run as successful a program as we did, we might lose some of the rights that are attained by this program. So just please mind the fencing.
In addition, it can subject people to charges on the federal, state, and local levels.
Thanks, Sean.
No joke, folks. We gotta work it out.
Okay, that being said, I'd like to make a motion that we close the regularly scheduled meeting of the town trustees. I'll make that motion.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.